Hi, today we're going to be talking about contrast and how to use contrast to get the most out of your images. Now, most people think that contrast is just simply a measure between the lowest part of the image in black and the highest part of the image that's in the white. However, as you'll see, there is a lot more to this. If you want to learn more about contrast, let's jump straight into DaVinci Resolve and let's get to it. So here we are in DaVinci Resolve. This is the color page. We've got our scopes over here. We've got our RGB parade. We've got our viewer, our node tree. I want to show you the clips. So let's go up to here, press clips, and all of our clips on the timeline pop up here. We've also got another one, which is the compound clip, which is a grayscale. So from pure black to pure white. And this is what I meant when contrast isn't just defined by the blackest black and the whitest white. Because if that theory held correct, this grayscale would have more contrast than this image here. This image does look more contrasty, even though black isn't black and white isn't white, or the highest point isn't at the top of the scale. So the image that we're going to be using today is going to be this one, which is our red surfer clip, and normalize this image. So we're going to go up to the gain to about here, and then we're going to go down to the lift to about there. So we've got a nice contrast range. So let's just play this image through. So looking at this image, we've exposed it right. However, for me, the skin tones are looking a little bit flat. So before we go any further, let's go over to our compound clip, which is over here. So we're just going to go over to our parade, click this button here. And what we're going to do is we are going to show reference levels. So what this will do, this will give us two reference levels where we can go up and set a point on the vector scope. And this is going to be really handy to show you how contrast and pivot works. So we're just going to set this to 400 or 40 rather, which is 40% on the IRE chart. So we're going to leave high where it is and just go to low like that. Let's click away and you can see now that we've got a line just here. So now if we go to our pivot and set this to 0.4 and use the contrast, you can see that our contrast point revolves around that pivot point. Let's switch away from the parade. Let's just switch to the waveform so you can see this a little bit clearer. We're going to need to reset that. Show reticles. Let's press 35. And you can see that line is now on 35 on the 0 to 100% of the IRE chart. So let's click away. Let's go over to our pivot. Let's type in 0.35. If we move our contrast, you can see the contrast will change around that pivot point. So let's go over to here. Let's have a look at the scopes. So our scopes haven't actually changed. So 0 is still the darkest part of the image and 100 is still the lightest part of the image. But let's turn this off and let's turn this on. This image overall looks more contrasty than the image before, and that's because of the ratio. And this is the really important thing to know about contrast. It's a ratio between how much darkness you've got in the image to how much white or lightness you've got in the image. So let's reset that and let's go back over to our surfer clip. So we're just going to go across to our next node here now that we're on the surfer image, and we're just going to go over to our contrast, just going to increase that to about 1.17. Now you can see that the image has gone darker because we are increasing that contrast ratio of the darks to the lights. So let's just go over to our pivot. Let's go around to 320. So let's just take a screenshot of that. So grab still. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to here. We're going to press this and this will give us a slide. We're just going to turn this off. We're going to show you the difference between the before and the after. So let's just highlight the face and you can see if we turn this on, the skin tones in this image are a lot more rich. But just quickly to show you how that contrast is changing the image, let's bring the swipe over to about here. So that's where our highlight was, and that's where it is. And this is after the contrast. So let's just go over to here, and let's just roll up the gain until we can get a match. So I think about there, let's just double check. I think we're a little bit high, so let's just bring that down. I want to get this as close as I can. So let's just go over to the lift and bring that down slightly. And let's just push up on the gain. Okay, great. Now, while the blacks are almost the same and the whites are almost the same, using that contrast, we have changed that ratio. And you can see clearly that those skin tones here are not as rich as the skin tones here with that contrast. So if you look at this image in terms of the darkest dark point and the whitest white point, these images should be the same. However, if you look at the ratio, which we've increased with the contrast slider, you can see this image is a lot richer. So let me just demonstrate this quickly again. And this time we're going to go with a brighter clip. So let's go over to this shot, which is the lady on the beach. Let's turn off of our swipe, which is up there. And you can see here on the waveform, we've got a really quite high bright point and quite a low dark point. So the contrast on this image is really high, and what you would expect if you was to go by the format of the highest white point and the lowest dark point, this image should be well balanced. However, it's not. So what we're going to do is we're just going to balance this. So let's go over to our gain and let's just bring this down, and let's just go over to our lift and just bring that shadows down. So what we've done here is we've exposed our image correctly. However, we want to increase the contrast. We're going to go over to our next node over here. We're just going to increase our contrast like so, and then we're going to go across to our pivot and bring that down. So let's go over to here, let's right click, let's grab a still. You can see that there is quite a little bit of difference here. So let's just right click, let's add a node, let's add serial, let's go over to here, let's click this button up here, which will bring up our still swipe. Let's put our swipe dead center in the middle, and now let's bring that gain up to match, and let's bring our lift down to match that contrast. So let's just do that. We might need to go back up on the gain a little bit, and I would say that we're there. So you can see clearly here that the luminance level at the top and the luminance level at the bottom are almost exact over here on the waveform. However, we move the swipe over here, you can see that this image is quite pale and washed out, and this image is a lot richer. So again, just to recap, contrast isn't about the darkest dark part compared to the whitest light part. It's a ratio of how much dark there is in the image to how much white in the image. So that's all we've got time for today in this episode. If you did get anything out of this, do remember to click that like and that subscribe button. It really works for me. And do remember to check out the video over here, how to expose the footage properly, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you, bye bye.